I'm a magazine editor who thought she had life figured out until a busted radiator hose changed everything on Route 50 just outside Arlington. My rental car chose the worst possible moment to die. Steam billowed from under the hood like a distress signal, and my designer heels weren't exactly built for roadside emergencies. I'd been driving to research equestrian facilities for our spring lifestyle issue when fate intervened. The pickup truck that pulled over looked like it belonged in a farming magazine, not rescuing a city editor in a pencil skirt. But when the driver stepped out, my breath caught. She moved with confident grace, her work boots crunching on gravel as she approached. "Engine trouble?" Her voice carried a slight drawl that made my pulse quicken. "Steam everywhere. I think it's dying." She laughed, a warm sound that reached her blue eyes. "Let's take a look." I watched her lean over the engine, brunette hair catching sunlight as she worked. Her hands moved expertly among the mechanical parts, completely in her element while I felt utterly useless. Radiator hose split clean through. "You're not driving anywhere soon." She wiped grease on her jeans. "I'm Ava. Charlotte. And apparently stranded. There's a diner 5 miles up. I'll drive you." Her truck's interior smelled like leather and hay, unexpectedly comforting. Country music played softly while rural Virginia rolled past my window. Ava drove with easy confidence, one hand on the wheel, occasionally glancing my way. "So what brings a city girl to horse country?" she asked. "Magazine article. I edit lifestyle pieces about things I've never actually experienced." "Like horses?" "Exactly like horses." At the diner, she ordered black coffee while I opted for something with more syllables in its name. The fluorescent lighting revealed more about her face. Strong jawline, laugh lines around those striking blue eyes, a small scar above her left eyebrow that made me curious about its story. "You breed horses?" I asked. "Thoroughbreds, family business, though I'm the last more standing." Something shadowed her expression briefly. "What kind of magazines?" "Arlington Monthly." "Very respectable, very boring." "Doesn't sound boring to me. Writing about lives you haven't lived takes imagination." Her insight surprised me. Most people assumed magazine work was glamorous rather than challenging. "Maybe you could show me around sometime, for the article." The words tumbled out before I could stop them. "I'd like that." Her smile made something flutter in my chest I hadn't felt in years. When the tow truck arrived, Ava insisted on following to ensure I got safely to the rental agency. She rolled down her window in the parking lot. "Call me about that tour." I took her business card, our fingers brushing briefly. The contact sent warmth shooting up my arm like nothing I'd experienced before. "I will." Watching her drive away, I realized this wasn't just about horses anymore. Something about Ava Ramirez had shifted my carefully ordered world off its axis, and I couldn't wait to discover what came next. 3 days after our roadside encounter, I found myself driving down a dusty lane toward more thoroughbred farm. Professional curiosity had given me the perfect excuse to see Ava again, though my racing pulse suggested this visit was about more than magazine research. The facility sprawled across rolling hills like something from a painting. White fences stretched endlessly, enclosing pastures where magnificent horses grazed in the afternoon sun. I parked near the main barn, inhaling the scent of hay and leather that seemed fundamental to this place. "You came." Ava emerged from the shadows of the barn, wearing faded jeans and a work shirt that highlighted her athletic build. Dirt smudged her cheek, but she'd never looked more beautiful. "I keep my promises." She led me through the barn, explaining bloodlines and breeding techniques while I pretended to focus on my notepad. Truth was, I couldn't stop watching her hands gesture as she spoke, or the way her eyes lit up discussing her horses. "This is Thunder's legacy," she said, stopping at a stall containing a black stallion. 4 generations of champions in his bloodline. The horse approached us, and I stepped back instinctively. Ava noticed immediately. "He won't hurt you. Here." She guided my hand to the horse's neck, her palm covering mine. The animal's warmth surprised me, but Ava's touch electrified me. She didn't move her hand away, and neither did I. "Feel that strength?" she whispered. I felt strength all right, but it had nothing to do with the horse. As evening approached, Ava suggested we continue talking over dinner. Her kitchen was rustic but warm, windows overlooking the pastures where horses moved like shadows in the fading light. "Wine?" she asked, producing a bottle from a cabinet. I don't usually drink during interviews. Is that what this still is? The question hung between us. I set down my pen and notepad deliberately. No, I don't think it ever was. We sat on her porch as darkness settled, wine loosening our tongues. She told me about fighting to keep the farm after her father died, about the loneliness of running a business in a field dominated by men who didn't take her seriously. What about you? She asked. Any family breathing down your neck about settling down? My parents died in a car accident 5 years ago. No siblings, just me and my career. That must be lonely too. Something in her voice made me look closer. Moonlight threw soft shadows across her face, highlighting the curve of her lips. It is, I admitted. The space between us seemed to shrink. I could smell her perfume mixed with the lingering scent of horses and hay. When she reached up to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear, I didn't pull away. Charlotte. My name on her lips sounded different. Intimate. She leaned closer and I met her halfway. Our lips touched tentatively at first, then with growing hunger. Her mouth was warm and wine-sweet, and when she deepened the kiss I felt something inside me break open. We broke apart, breathing hard. I should go, I whispered, though I made no move to leave. Should you? Instead of answering, I kissed her again, harder this time. Her arms encircled me, pulling me closer until I could feel her heart hammering against my chest. This wasn't supposed to happen. I didn't plan for this attraction, this desperate need that made my carefully controlled world tilt sideways. When we finally separated, her eyes searched mine. This changes everything, I said. Does it scare you? Terrifies me. She smiled, that same confident expression I'd seen when she'd fixed my car. Good. The best things usually do. Driving home through the dark Virginia countryside, I couldn't stop touching my lips where she'd kissed me. My phone buzzed with a text from my editor about deadline schedules, yanking me back to reality. But reality had shifted. Ava Ramirez had awakened something I didn't even know was sleeping, and there was no going back. A week later, Ava stood in my Arlington apartment looking like she'd wandered into the wrong movie. Her flannel shirt and worn boots clashed dramatically with my minimalist decor and polished hardwood floors. Nice place, she said, running her fingers along my granite countertop. Very clean. I caught the hesitation in her voice. You hate it. I didn't say that. She examined my collection of design magazines, stacked precisely on the coffee table. It's just so different from the farm. Everything about our worlds was different. Her hands bore calluses from years of physical work, while mine were soft from keyboard typing. She smelled like sunshine and hay, while my perfume came from expensive bottles. Want some wine? I asked, needing something to calm my nerves. Sure. I poured 2 glasses, hyper-aware of her presence in my carefully curated space. She moved to the window overlooking the city lights, and I joined her there. Do you ever miss it? The noise, the chaos? She asked. Sometimes. But chaos doesn't pay the bills or meet magazine deadlines. Deadlines. She turned to face me. When's your next one? Tomorrow. The horse breeding article. I took a sip of wine. My editor thinks I'm spending too much time on research. Is that what you call it? The question held an edge that made my pulse quicken. Before I could answer, she closed the distance between us, backing me against the window. I've been thinking about you, she whispered against my neck. Her lips found that sensitive spot below my ear, and rational thought scattered. My wine glass slipped from my fingers, hitting the floor with a soft thud. Ava? She silenced me with a kiss that tasted like wine and desperation. This time there was no hesitation, no gentle exploration. Her hands tangled in my hair while mine fumbled with the buttons of her shirt. We stumbled toward my bedroom, leaving a trail of discarded clothing. The designer bedspread I'd spent months selecting became a rumpled afterthought as she pressed me down onto the mattress. Are you sure? She asked, her voice husky. More sure than I've ever been about anything. What followed erased every careful boundary I'd built around my heart. Her touch ignited fires I didn't know existed, and when she whispered my name against my skin, I understood why people wrote poetry about moments like this. We moved together with an urgency that surprised us both, 2 women finding something neither had expected to need. Afterward, we lay entwined in the darkness, her fingers tracing patterns on my shoulder. Stay tonight? I whispered. I should get back to the horses. They can survive one night without you. She laughed softly. You don't know horses very well. I know I don't want you to leave. Something shifted in her expression. Charlotte, what are we doing here? I don't know. But I don't want to stop. She was quiet for a long moment, and I feared I'd said too much too soon. My life is complicated, she finally said. The farm, the responsibilities. Mine too. Deadlines, expectations, a career that requires complete focus. So what does that make us? Crazy, probably. We both laughed, but underneath the humor lay a recognition of the impossible situation we'd created. How could someone like me, with my structured city life and demanding career, possibly fit into her world of early mornings and physical labor? How could she, with her deep roots in rural Virginia, understand the pressure I faced to maintain my professional reputation? But when she pulled me closer and I felt the steady rhythm of her breathing against my ear, those concerns seemed manageable. Whatever complications lay ahead, this feeling was worth fighting for. My editor wants the article finished tomorrow, I said into the darkness. Then you better make it good. What if I can't be objective anymore? Who says you have to be? Her answer surprised me. I'd spent my career maintaining professional distance, but maybe some stories required a different approach. As dawn crept through my bedroom curtains, I watched Ava dress for the drive back to the farm. She moved with quiet efficiency, already mentally preparing for her morning responsibilities. I'll call you, she said, kissing me goodbye. You better. After she left, I sat at my laptop staring at a blank document. How could I write about horse breeding when all I could think about was the woman who'd just walked out my door? My editor, Richard Hamilton, summoned me to his corner office 2 weeks after my night with Ava. He sat behind his mahogany desk like a judgment tribunal, my horse breeding article spread before him. This piece reads like a love letter, not journalism. Heat crept up my neck. I think it captures the passion behind the profession. Passion. He removed his glasses, cleaning them slowly. Charlotte, you've spent 3 weeks on what should have been a weekend assignment. Our readers want lifestyle content, not agricultural deep dives. The story has layers. There's real human interest here. Human interest in a horse breeder? His tone dripped skepticism. You're one of our best editors precisely because you maintain professional distance. Don't lose that edge over some rural fascination. I wanted to tell him it wasn't fascination keeping me awake at night, but the memory of Ava's hands on my skin. Instead, I nodded and retreated to my cubicle, his warning echoing in my head. That evening, I drove to the farm to find Ava in the barn office, surrounded by financial documents and looking defeated. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her usually confident posture had collapsed into exhaustion. Bad day? I asked. Griffith Industries pulled their contract. 3 years of breeding their champion bloodlines, gone. She gestured at the papers. That was 60% of my income. I sat beside her, studying the numbers. The situation was worse than she'd let on. Without that contract, the farm faced bankruptcy within months. What will you do? Pray for a miracle, I guess. Or start looking for buyers. The thought of her losing everything hit me harder than expected. This place was part of her identity, her family legacy. What if I helped? I have savings. Her expression hardened immediately. No. Ava, be reasonable. This is just business. Is it? She stood, pacing the small office. You show up with your city money, thinking you can fix everything with a checkbook? That's not what I meant. Isn't it? Rich magazine editor swoops in to save the struggling farm girl? Her words stung because they held a grain of truth I didn't want to acknowledge. I care about you. About this place. You care about the fantasy version you've created in your head. The romantic notion of country life that fits your magazine story. That's not fair. Fair? She laughed bitterly. You think any of this is fair? You get to play dress up in my world for a few weeks, then return to your perfectly ordered life when things get messy. The accusation hung between us like a physical barrier. I wanted to argue, to prove her wrong, but doubt crept in. Was I really ready to abandon everything I'd built for someone I'd known 3 weeks? Maybe you're right, I said quietly. Something shifted in her eyes. What? We're too different. This was bound to implode eventually. Charlotte. Her voice softened, but I was already moving toward the door. I should go. Let you figure this out. Don't leave like this. But I was already walking away, anger and hurt propelling me toward my car. Behind me, I heard her call my name, but I didn't turn around. The drive back to Arlington blurred through tears I refused to acknowledge. By the time I reached my apartment, I'd convinced myself this was inevitable. Oil and water, city and country. We'd been fooling ourselves thinking it could work. But lying alone in the bed where we'd made love, surrounded by the lingering scent of her perfume on my pillows, I couldn't shake the image of her defeated expression, or the way her voice had cracked when she'd called after me. My phone buzzed with a text, "I'm sorry, can we talk?" I stared at the message for 10 minutes before deleting it without responding. Some chasms were too wide to bridge, and maybe it was better to face that truth now before we hurt each other worse. 3 days of silence followed. I threw myself into work, accepting every assignment Richard offered, desperate for distraction. But even editing pieces about wine tastings and gallery openings couldn't erase the memory of Ava's laugh or the way she'd looked at me that first night in the barn. On Friday evening, my phone rang. Ava's name appeared on the screen and my heart hammered against my ribs. "Hello? One of my horses is sick. I thought you might want to know. For your article." Her voice sounded carefully neutral, but I heard the exhaustion underneath. "Is he okay?" She, Thunder's Legacy's daughter. The vet thinks she'll recover, but... Her voice trailed off. "But I might have to sell her to pay the bills. Thought you should know how your story ends." 2 weeks of silence stretched between us before circumstance forced our paths to cross again. Arlington's annual Civil War reenactment was happening at Manassas Battlefield, and Richard had assigned me the historical lifestyle piece as punishment for my unfocused horse article. I arrived Saturday morning expecting costumed tourists and amateur historians. Instead, I found myself watching hundreds of reenactors transform the field into 1861. The attention to detail was staggering. Period-correct uniforms, authentic weapons, even horses that looked bred for cavalry service. Then, I saw her. Ava sat astride a magnificent bay gelding, wearing a Union cavalry uniform that fit her like it was tailored yesterday. She moved with the horse as if they'd been partners for years, her posture straight and commanding. Everything about her bearing screamed military precision from another century. "Impressive, isn't she?" An elderly reenactor appeared beside me. "Most of these weekend warriors can barely stay in the saddle, but that woman rides like she was born to it." I watched Ava execute complex cavalry maneuvers with effortless grace. The crowd murmured appreciation as she demonstrated saber techniques that looked decidedly lethal despite being choreographed. "She's just a horse breeder," I said. "Horse breeder?" He laughed. "Lady, that's the finest cavalry work I've seen in 30 years of reenacting. She knows techniques most historians only read about in dusty textbooks." During the battle demonstration, Ava led a cavalry charge that took my breath away. She and her mount moved as one fluid unit, her saber glinting in the afternoon sun as she wheeled and struck at imaginary enemies. The other reenactors struggled to keep up with her pace and precision. But it was afterward that things got truly strange. A group of serious-looking historians surrounded Ava, peppering her with questions about 19th century horsemanship and cavalry tactics. I edged closer, my journalist instincts kicking in. "The key to the turning movement is weight distribution," she was explaining. "You shift your weight forward and use leg pressure, not reins, to signal direction changes during saber work." "Where did you learn that?" asked a woman with a university badge. "That technique was used by Sheridan's cavalry, but it's not documented in any surviving manuals." "Family knowledge," Ava replied smoothly. "Passed down through generations." "Remarkable. Would you be willing to demonstrate the Brandy Station pivot? We've been debating the mechanics for years." Without hesitation, Ava mounted her horse and executed a series of movements that made the historians gasp. The maneuver was complex, requiring split-second timing and perfect communication between horse and rider. "Extraordinary," the professor breathed. "That's exactly how it would have been performed in 1863. I stood frozen, watching this woman I thought I knew display skills that seemed impossible. How did a modern horse breeder perfect techniques from 150 years ago? And why did she look so natural in that cavalry uniform? After the crowd dispersed, I approached her as she unsaddled her horse. "Impressive show," I said. She turned, surprise flickering across her face. "Charlotte, I didn't expect to see you here. Working. Historical lifestyle piece. I gestured toward the battlefield, though I'm starting to think there's more history here than I realized. Something guarded entered her expression. What do you mean? Those maneuvers. The professors seemed amazed by your knowledge. I've studied cavalry tactics. Goes with the horse breeding territory. Does it? Or is there something else you're not telling me? She finished with the tack, avoiding my eyes. Like what? I don't know. But watching you out there, it was like you'd done it before. Really done it. That's ridiculous. But her voice lacked conviction, and I caught something in her tone that made my investigative instincts flare. There was a story here, something deeper than weekend hobby or academic interest. That evening, I found myself driving toward her farm without consciously deciding to go there. We hadn't spoken since our fight, but questions burned in my mind that only she could answer. I found her in the barn, grooming the same horse she'd ridden at the reenactment. She looked up when I entered, resignation crossing her face. Come to interrogate me about my mysterious cavalry skills? Come to apologize. And yes, maybe ask a few questions. She set down the brush, studying my face. Apology first. I was wrong to offer money like that, and wrong to walk away without fighting for us. Go on. I miss you, miss this. I gestured between us. Whatever complications we have, running away isn't solving them. She moved closer, and I caught that familiar scent of hay and leather that had become intoxicating. I miss you too, she admitted. But Charlotte, there are things about me you don't know. Things that might scare you away. Like being able to ride like a 19th century cavalry officer? Her laugh held no humor. Something like that. Try me. She was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Finally, she met my eyes. My family has always had unusual talents, things most people would call impossible. What kind of talents? The kind that let me know things I shouldn't know. See things that happened long before I was born. Ava led me to her farmhouse after that admission, her hands shaking slightly as she unlocked the front door. The living room felt charged with tension as she disappeared upstairs, returning with an old wooden trunk. My grandmother left me this when she died. I never showed it to anyone before. Inside lay yellowed photographs, military documents, and leather-bound journals dating back decades. But what made my breath catch were the daguerreotypes from the 1860s. One showed a woman in Union cavalry uniform, who could have been Ava's twin. That's my great-great-grandmother, Sarah Moore. She served disguised as a man in the 3rd Virginia Cavalry. I studied the photograph, my journalist mind racing. The resemblance was uncanny, but that didn't explain Ava's impossible skills. Family resemblance doesn't account for what I saw today. No, it doesn't. Ava sat beside me, her voice barely above a whisper. My family has always had connections to the past, visions, knowledge that comes from nowhere. My grandmother called it a gift, I call it a burden. Visions of what? Battles I never fought. Horses I never trained. Sometimes I dream about cavalry charges so real I wake up with the scent of gunpowder in my nostrils. She pulled out a journal, opening to pages of detailed sketches depicting Civil War cavalry formations and horse training techniques. I drew these when I was 12, before I'd ever read a history book or seen a reenactment. The drawings were sophisticated, showing tactical knowledge no child should possess. My rational mind scrambled for explanations while my heart recognized the courage it took for her to share this. You think I'm crazy? I think you're extraordinary and terrifying, and I have no idea what to do with that. She cupped my face in her hands. I've been afraid to let anyone close because of this, because eventually they always think I'm either insane or lying. I'm a journalist. I deal in facts and evidence. This challenges everything I believe about the world. And I love you anyway. The words surprised us both. We'd never said them aloud before, but they hung in the air between us like a bridge across impossible circumstances. Charlotte, I love you, I repeated. Whatever this is, whatever it means, I love you. She kissed me then, deeply and desperately, as if I might disappear if she let go. When we broke apart, tears glistened in her eyes. I love you too, more than I thought possible. We made love that night with a tenderness born of complete honesty. Every touch carried new meaning now that no secrets remained between us. Her hands explored my body like she was memorizing each curve, while I traced patterns on her skin that felt like writing love letters in an ancient language. Afterward, she held me against her chest while moonlight streamed through her bedroom windows. I could feel her heart still racing, matching the rhythm of my own. "What happens now?" I asked. "I don't know. I've never gotten this far before." "With the visions?" "With trusting someone enough to share them." I thought about my carefully structured life, my career built on logical thinking and verifiable facts. Everything about Ava challenged that foundation, yet I couldn't imagine walking away from her again. "Tell me about the dreams, the visions." So she did. For hours she described experiences that defied explanation, seeing Civil War battles through the eyes of soldiers long dead, knowing the names and temperaments of horses she'd never met, understanding combat techniques no modern person should possess. Sometimes I can sense things about horses just by touching them, their bloodlines, their potential, even their past injuries. That's how I've been so successful at breeding. It's not skill, it's whatever this gift is. Does it hurt, having these visions? Sometimes, when they're violent or traumatic. But mostly it's like having access to a library of experiences that aren't mine. Dawn was breaking when we finally fell asleep, exhausted by revelation and the emotional weight of complete vulnerability. I woke first, watching sunlight paint gold across her sleeping face. In sleep, she looked peaceful, free from the burden of carrying impossible knowledge. My phone buzzed with a text from Richard about deadlines, yanking me back to reality. How could I return to my magazine job and pretend this conversation never happened? How could I write about wine tastings and gallery openings when the woman I loved experienced visions from another century? But looking at Ava, I realized those questions missed the point entirely. Love wasn't about finding someone who fit neatly into your existing life. It was about being willing to expand that life to include something unprecedented and profound. "Morning," she murmured, her eyes still closed. "Morning. Sleep well?" "Better than I have in years." She stretched against me, and I felt desire stir again despite our exhaustion. "No visions last night?" "Just dreams of you." We kissed slowly, savoring this new intimacy. Whatever challenges lay ahead, we'd face them together now, armed with complete honesty and something stronger than either past or future could threaten. Monday morning brought reality crashing down like a sledgehammer. Richard called me into his office before I'd even settled at my desk, his expression thunderous. "The equestrian piece is dead. Kill it." "What? Why?" "Corporate decision. Arlington Monthly is pivoting toward urban luxury content. No more rural interest stories." He leaned back in his leather chair. "Frankly, Charlotte, your recent work has been unfocused, distracted. Whatever's going on in your personal life needs to stay out of the office." Heat flooded my cheeks. My work quality hasn't suffered. Hasn't it? 3 weeks on a horse breeding story that reads like a romance novel, missing deadlines, coming in late? He tapped his pen against his desk. "Get your head back in the game, or we'll find someone who can." I wanted to argue, to defend the passion that had driven my recent writing, but his expression brooked no discussion. Walking back to my cubicle felt like a death march. That afternoon, I drove to the farm to find Ava deep in conversation with 2 men in expensive suits. The tension was immediately apparent, even from a distance. "Final offer, Miss Ramirez. Pemberton Development won't negotiate further." "I told you, the farm isn't for sale. Be reasonable. You're facing bankruptcy. We're offering fair market value." Ava noticed me approaching, and something desperate flickered in her eyes. "Gentlemen, I need to discuss this with my financial advisor." The developers looked skeptical but handed her business cards before leaving. Once their car disappeared down the drive, Ava's confident facade crumbled. "Financial advisor?" I asked. I panicked. They've been pressuring me for weeks, showing up unannounced, making veiled threats about my debts becoming public record. Can they do that? Apparently. They claim I owe back taxes I've never heard of, equipment loans that don't exist. Someone's been doctoring financial records to force this sale. The injustice of it made my blood boil. That's fraud. Prove it. They have lawyers and bottomless pockets. I have mounting bills and a mortgage payment due next week. We sat on her porch steps, watching her horses graze in the evening light. The peaceful scene felt fragile, threatened by forces beyond our control. "What if we fought back?" I asked. With what? Good intentions and righteous anger? With the truth. I'm a journalist, Ava. I know how to investigate, how to expose corruption. You also just told me your magazine killed the horse story. Why would they publish an exposé about rural land development? She was right, but that didn't stop the wheels turning in my mind. There had to be a way to help her, to save this place that meant everything to her. Stay with me tonight, she said quietly. If they succeed, I might not have many nights left here. We made love with desperate intensity, as if physical connection could anchor us against the storms threatening to tear us apart. Every touch felt precious, potentially fleeting. When she whispered my name against my neck, it sounded like a prayer and a plea combined. Later, lying tangled in her sheets, I traced circles on her bare shoulder while she dozed. My phone buzzed with work emails I ignored. For the first time in my career, deadlines felt insignificant compared to the woman sleeping in my arms. Charlotte? Her voice was drowsy, vulnerable. I'm here. Whatever happens with the farm, with everything, I want you to know this has been the happiest month of my life. Tears stung my eyes. Don't talk like it's ending. Isn't it? Your job, my debts, the fact that we live in completely different worlds? We'll figure it out. She sat up, moonlight silvering her skin. How? You heard your editor today. I heard the resignation in your voice when you told me about it. So I'll find another job. Doing what? There aren't exactly magazines covering rural Virginia looking for editors. The practical obstacles felt insurmountable, but I refused to accept defeat. Then, I'll freelance. Start my own publication. Something. With what money? And where would you live? My farmhouse isn't exactly set up for a magazine editor's lifestyle. I don't care about lifestyle. Don't you? Your apartment, your career, the life you've built? You'd give all that up for someone you've known a month? The question hung between us like a challenge. Would I? Could I abandon everything I'd worked for, everything I'd planned, for love that felt too intense to be sustainable? Ask me again tomorrow, I said finally. Will your answer be different? I don't know. But tonight, lying here with you, the answer is yes. Yes to everything. She kissed me softly, a kiss that tasted like promises we might not be able to keep. I love you, she whispered. I love you too. Whatever that means for tomorrow. Outside, wind rattled the windows like time itself trying to break in, reminding us that some decisions couldn't wait for convenient timing or perfect circumstances. The next morning, I called in sick and drove straight to the courthouse. If Pemberton Development was manipulating financial records, there would be a paper trail. 4 hours of digging through public documents revealed what I suspected: phantom tax liens and fake loan agreements designed to force Ava into bankruptcy. My phone rang as I photographed the fraudulent paperwork. Charlotte, where the hell are you? Richard's voice crackled with irritation. Following a story. The horse thing again? I told you that's dead. This is bigger. Corporate fraud, illegal land acquisition, real journalism. Not on company time, it isn't. Get back here now or clean out your desk. I stared at the evidence spread before me, then at my phone displaying Richard's number. The choice crystallized with startling clarity. Consider my desk cleaned. I hung up and called the Washington Post's investigative desk. 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from senior editor Marcus Chen, presenting my findings. This is solid work, he admitted, reviewing my documentation. But why bring it to us instead of your own magazine? Because they fired me an hour ago for pursuing it. Ah, he smiled. Well, that's their loss. We'll run this as a weekend feature if you can get us more sources. That evening, I arrived at the farm to find Ava in the barn, brushing Thunder's legacy with mechanical precision. Her movements were sharp, angry. Bad day? I asked. 3 more people called about buying horses. Words getting out about my financial situation. She didn't look at me. Vultures circling. I have good news. Unless it's a miracle, I don't want to hear it. I pulled out printed copies of the documents. Pemberton Development has been falsifying records, tax liens that don't exist, loan agreements with forged signatures. It's all here. She stopped brushing, finally meeting my eyes. How did you get this? Investigative journalism. And the Washington Post is running the story this weekend. Hope flickered across her face before caution replaced it. Will that stop them? It'll expose them, force investigations, give you legal ammunition to fight back, and cost you your job apparently. She'd noticed my earlier resignation. Worth it. She set down the brush and walked toward me slowly. You quit your magazine for this? I quit my magazine for you. The story was just the catalyst. Charlotte. Her voice broke slightly. You can't throw away your career for me. Watch me. This time when she kissed me, it was different. Not desperate or tender, but fierce with gratitude and something deeper. When we broke apart, I could see tears threatening. I can't believe you did that. Believe it, I'm all in now. Completely committed to this crazy life we're building. We drove to Arlington that night to celebrate at a quiet restaurant overlooking the Potomac. Over wine and candlelight, we talked about futures that suddenly seemed possible again. What will you do about work? She asked. Freelance investigative pieces. Maybe start that rural issues publication I mentioned. Based where? Wherever you are. She reached across the table, taking my hand. I never thought I'd find someone willing to fight for me like this. Get used to it. Walking along the riverbank afterward, she stopped suddenly and turned to face me. I have something to tell you. About the missing person case from 1987. What about it? I think I know where to find the body. Before I could respond, she described a vision that had come to her that afternoon. A young woman buried near an old oak tree, recognizable landmarks that pinpointed a location 20 miles from her farm. We have to call the police, I said. With what? Psychic visions? They'll think I'm crazy. Maybe. Or maybe they'll think you're helpful. Cold cases need all the leads they can get. The next morning, we sat in Detective Rivera's office while Ava nervously described her vision. To his credit, he listened without interrupting, taking careful notes. The family deserves closure, he said finally. If you're wrong, we waste a day of excavation. If you're right, someone finally gets to come home, Ava finished. 3 days later, they found Sarah Martinez exactly where Ava had described. The discovery made local headlines and began changing public perception of Ava's unusual abilities. That weekend, the Washington Post ran my exposé on Pemberton development. The story sparked federal investigations and gave Ava the legal leverage she needed to save her farm. We did it, I whispered, holding her on the porch while reading congratulatory messages from other investigative journalists. We did. She kissed me under the stars, and I tasted victory and love, and the promise of whatever came next. No more secrets between us, she said. Never again. Standing there in her arms, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of her horses and the scent of hay and honeysuckle, I couldn't imagine wanting to be anywhere else in the world. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of what was now officially our farmhouse, watching Ava work with a new colt through the window. My laptop sat open on the scarred wooden table, displaying the homepage of Rural Truths, the investigative publication I'd launched with proceeds from my Washington Post freelance work. The magazine was small but growing, focusing on stories mainstream media ignored: land disputes, agricultural corruption, environmental issues affecting rural communities. My Pemberton development exposé had opened doors to sources across Virginia, and subscriptions climbed weekly. How's the deadline looking? Ava called from the doorway, hay in her hair and satisfaction on her face. Met it an hour ago. Pierce County water contamination story goes live tomorrow. She crossed to me, still smelling like sunshine and horses, and read over my shoulder. This is going to make some powerful people very angry. Good. They should be. She kissed the top of my head, and I leaned into her familiar warmth. These quiet domestic moments still amazed me. 6 months ago, I'd been living in a sterile apartment, married to deadlines instead of dreams. Now I woke to roosters and went to sleep listening to horses moving in distant pastures. Detective Rivera called, she said, settling beside me with coffee. The Martinez family wants to meet us. Thank us personally. How do you feel about that? Nervous. Grateful. Still can't believe my visions helped solve a 30-year-old case. Since finding Sarah Martinez's remains, Ava had quietly consulted on 3 other cold cases. Word spread carefully through law enforcement circles about the horse breeder with unusual insights. She never advertised her abilities, but she never hid them either. Any new ones lately? Visions, I mean. Nothing dramatic. Sometimes I still dream about cavalry charges, but they're gentler now. Less desperate. I understood. Her visions had always been tied to unfinished business, unresolved trauma echoing across decades. As she found peace in her own life, the psychic storms seemed to calm. My phone buzzed with a message from another journalist wanting advice about starting an independent publication. Rural Truths was becoming a model for others tired of corporate media constraints. Dinner with the Hendersons tonight, Ava reminded me. Our neighbors had become unexpected friends, drawn by curiosity about the city editor who'd traded deadlines for dirt roads. Tom Henderson had even started feeding me story tips about local political corruption. I should warn Mary her famous pot roast might end up inspiring an article about sustainable farming practices. She'd love that. Fame through casseroles. We laughed, and I marveled again at how natural this felt. 6 months ago, I couldn't distinguish between hay and straw. Now I could discuss bloodlines and breeding schedules while editing investigations into corporate agriculture. As evening approached, we walked the property together, checking on horses and planning improvements. The farm was thriving again, bolstered by new clients attracted to Ava's growing reputation for producing exceptional horses. Sometimes I can't believe this is real, I said, watching the sunset paint the pastures gold. Which part? All of it. Us, the magazine. This life we've built. She stopped walking and pulled me into her arms. Believe it. We fought for this. Yes, we did. She kissed me slowly, thoroughly, the way she had that first night in the barn when everything changed. Her lips still tasted like possibility and promise. I have something for you, she said when we broke apart. From her pocket, she produced a small velvet box that made my heart skip. Ava, I know we haven't talked about marriage, and I know this is complicated with your career and everything changing so fast, but... She opened the box to reveal a simple gold band set with a modest diamond. I want to build forever with you. Tears blurred my vision. Yes. Yes? Yes to forever. Yes to marriage. Yes to everything we haven't even imagined yet. She slipped the ring onto my finger with shaking hands, and it fit perfectly, like everything else about us that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. We kissed again as stars emerged overhead, surrounded by the peaceful sounds of horses settling for the night, and the distant call of an owl. This place that had once seemed foreign now felt like home, in ways my Arlington apartment never had. What happens next? I asked. Whatever we want. The magazine, the farm, maybe expanding into multimedia storytelling. I love the sound of our future. Even if it includes early morning feeding schedules and hay in your coffee. Especially then. Walking back toward the house, my ring catching moonlight and Ava's hand warm in mine, I thought about the story I'd write about us someday. 2 women from different worlds who decided love was worth rewriting all their carefully laid plans. It would be the kind of story I never could have imagined 6 months ago, sitting in that sterile magazine office, thinking I had life figured out. Now I knew better. The best stories weren't the ones you planned. They were the ones that found you on backwoods highways when your engine overheated and your heart was ready for revolution.